Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله حمدا كثيرا كما يحب ربنا ويرضى. Welcome to another episode of the miracles of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this episode will be a little bit different. We're not going to talk about something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam talked about regarding the future and it happened, or something regarding this creation and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it and putting all the details and all the different scientific things the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam talked about. No. Today inshallah we're going to talk about another miracle, but a little bit different. This miracle is the fact that the journey of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that was recorded to us, that was recorded for us in the Quran and the Hadith, is by itself, just the journey is the miracle. A person who had the attributes the Prophet ﷺ had in himself, and the morals the Prophet ﷺ had, and the accomplishments of the Prophet ﷺ had, and how he changed the humans around him to be better humans. This by itself is a miracle, proving to us, proving to every single human being that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is impossible. It's impossible to be a person who is dishonest in claiming that he's a prophet from Allah and making that up. Salawatu Rabbi wa salamu alayhi. Everything in his history and his journey proves that to us. Starting from the very basic fact of being very honest. Very, very, very honest. Where he was called Al-Amin. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He was nicknamed Al-Amin. The Prophet ﷺ, he also used this fact to prove to people around him that he was a prophet from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the Prophet ﷺ announced to the general population of Quraysh, where he used to stay in Mecca, he climbed a mountain, he called people and he asked people, if I had told you that there is an army just about to invade you right now, would you believe me or not? The people attested and they confirmed, telling him, we have never ever witnessed you telling a lie. We would believe you. The Prophet ﷺ replied saying that if that's the case, then I am a messenger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ replied saying that a messenger from Allah to you to warn you about a severe punishment from your Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala. He used that fact that they all knew that he is very honest with them, with the people, and with us to this day, as people who know about his history from the Hadith and from the Quran. Use this fact to prove to human beings that he is definitely a prophet from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His honesty, his generosity. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the Sahaba, one of the companions, he describes him as being ajwadun nas, the most generous, to the point where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as the head of the state of the Muslimin, he dies without having any inheritance giving to his family. All of the money he had was spent in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For a person who is dishonest and not really believing in what he's calling for, and not really believing in the importance of the sacrifice, you would not see him distributing his wealth as the Prophet ﷺ did. You would see him accumulating the wealth, and as the head of state, looking for a lavish life, looking for a nice life. The Prophet ﷺ had the simplest of life, because he totally believed, truly believed in what he was calling people for, which is the Day of Judgment, which is and the akhirah and the Jannah, which is the real success. The Prophet ﷺ did not care as much about this dunya and accumulating this dunya, because he really and truly believed in what he was calling for, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All of that, and the way he treated people, the way he was, how nice he was to people, how nice he was to people who prosecuted him, how nice he was to people who oppressed him, how nice he was to people sometimes who were harsh with him. One of the people who tried to test the Prophet ﷺ, he came to him and he held him from his clothing, to the point where his clothing started making marks on his body, on his neck, and asking him for something the Prophet ﷺ did not have to do at that point. The Prophet ﷺ had borrowed some money and he did not give it back. That person was claiming that the Prophet ﷺ is taking too long and he is missing the deadline, where the Prophet ﷺ was not. But apparently that person was trying to test him. The Prophet ﷺ, he held his temper, and the Prophet ﷺ dealt with him in a very calm demeanor. And the Prophet ﷺ gave him, that person, all the reasons to believe in him, all the way to the point where that person ended up accepting Islam, because of how he saw the Prophet ﷺ was very patient and was very kind and was very nice. The Prophet ﷺ was loved by his wives, was loved by his companions. The Prophet ﷺ, anybody would even see him, or a lot of people who saw him said that this can't be the face of a liar. This is an honest person. The Prophet ﷺ, and how he changed the community around him, how he eliminated racism, completely eliminated racism. How the Prophet ﷺ eliminated classism, the different tribes having different levels and different preferences. He eliminated that. How much the Prophet ﷺ encouraged people to help the poor, to help the weak, fighting for the weak, fighting for the people who are oppressed. That was what the Prophet ﷺ finished and spent his life doing. All of that, what he had as attributes in himself, as manners in himself, as things he called for and fought for, as things he sacrificed for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as what people attested about him and what people said about how honest he was and how amazing as a person he was and how generous he was. All of that is a miracle, because a person who is dishonest cannot do that. A person who is claiming that he's sent by the creator of this whole universe and the creator of human beings, who claims that while being dishonest and making that up, would not do the things the Prophet ﷺ used to do. So this is another proof. This is another proof, exactly as the Prophet ﷺ used it for the people around him, to prove to them that he is definitely honest in his claim that he's sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a proof for us nowadays in 2023 to be certain that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is definitely a messenger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because what is a miracle? And what is the purpose of a miracle? If it is not for proving the Prophet ﷺ is a prophet. So this is another miracle. This is another reason for us to use, to believe, and be certain, more certain about the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite us in his group on the Day of Judgment, and make us of his nation that he gives shafa'ah for, which is asking and pleading for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala include us in that plead. Amin ya Rabbil Alameen. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us do our best in this dunya, in this life, our best to reach the highest level of Jannah, to be with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whom we're learning about. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove and protect us from all the things that are distracting us from this goal in the times where a lot of people don't care about this goal. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hold us steady and strong on this path. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. See you in the next episode inshallah ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.